My name's Ellery Hart. Not the kind of name people remember, which is probably fitting. I've spent most of my life trying to blend in, do the right thing, show up on time, be dependable, loyal, present. I wasn't born for drama or headlines. I was made for small moments, tying shoes before school, packing lunches with extra napkins, saving the last slice of pie for someone else. That's the kind of man I've always been. And for the last 12 years, I thought Serafina knew that and loved me for it. She was always the radiant one, the kind of woman who walks into a room and rearranges its gravity. When we met, I had a sprained ankle and an awkward laugh. She had a dream and a plane ticket. Somehow, we met in the middle. I used to think that was fate. Now, I'm not so sure. Last month, Serafina left for a 5-day business retreat in Santa Clara. Some kind of executive leadership conference hosted by her firm. She's been growing rapidly in her career, and I've been proud of her, genuinely proud. I took on more of the home load without complaint. The late-night Zoom calls, the early morning flights, the silent dinners where her mind was clearly elsewhere. I chalked it all up to ambition, to building something. I trusted her. I loved her. Still do, if I'm being honest. And that might be the hardest part. The idea to surprise her wasn't some grand scheme. It came from our daughter, Elodie. She's 7, all heart and freckles, and that Thursday evening she looked up from her cereal and said, "Do you think Mom misses us?" I told her, of course she does. But something about the way she asked it stuck with me. Like maybe we weren't the center of Serafina's world anymore. So I checked my points, booked 3 tickets, and the next morning, we boarded a flight to California. The kids were over the moon. Elodie insisted on carrying a little sign that said, "We missed you," in pink marker. Our son, Cyrus, who's 10 and more reserved, just kept asking what floor her hotel room would be on. I spent most of the flight running through the logistics in my head. Would she be at the hotel or out with coworkers? Would she be surprised or annoyed? I didn't care. I just wanted to see her face light up, even for a second. We got to the hotel around 3:15 p.m. It was a warm, golden California afternoon, and the kids were buzzing with anticipation. The lobby smelled like eucalyptus and citrus, the kind of place that makes you feel small and unimportant, even as you smile through it. I approached the front desk and asked for her room number. The woman behind the counter paused, then politely asked me to wait. A few minutes later, a different staff member approached, whispering that they couldn't give out that information without permission. I told them I was her husband, showed them pictures, even our marriage certificate which I still had stored on my phone for tax purposes. Don't ask. Still, no dice. The rules were rules. So I texted her. "Hey," I wrote, "we're here. We came to surprise you. The kids are so excited." I waited. No reply. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. I started to feel it, that low thrum of discomfort in the chest. Not quite panic, but something colder. Something uncertain. Finally, after nearly 30 minutes, I got a reply. "Hey, wow, you're here? That's unexpected. I'm not at the hotel right now. I'll be back later tonight. Maybe we can meet in the morning." That was the moment something shifted inside me. I didn't know what it was yet, but something cracked. The message was polite, but not warm. Not excited. Not, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. Where are you? Bring the kids up." It was cautious. Like she was trying to buy time. I read it 3 times, then showed it to Cyrus. He shrugged. Elodie didn't understand. She kept looking toward the elevators like Serafina might suddenly appear. That evening, we walked around town, got ice cream, and checked into a small place nearby, not as luxurious, but clean, quiet. I tried not to read into anything. People get busy. Maybe she was tied up in meetings. Maybe there was a dinner. Maybe I should have called. But that night, lying in a room with one kid on each side of me, both sleeping with their mouths slightly open, I stared at the ceiling and couldn't shake one thought. Why did it feel like we weren't welcome? And that was just the beginning. I've always believed that people reveal who they are in their silence. You just have to sit in it long enough, breathe through the discomfort, and listen to what isn't being said. That night, after I put the kids to bed in that modest little room with creaky floorboards and wallpaper that felt like it remembered better decades, I sat by the window with my phone in my hand. I didn't text her again. I didn't ask for explanations. I just stared at that one-line message she sent earlier. "Maybe we can meet in the morning?" It replayed in my mind with a strange echo, like I was trying to understand not just the words, but what was underneath them. There wasn't a trace of excitement. Not even curiosity. No emojis. No "I miss you." And that absence, it carried a different kind of weight. It wasn't cold. It was practiced. I scrolled up through our old texts. Weeks, even months back. I noticed something I hadn't really let myself see before. Her replies had slowly turned transactional. Okay. Got it. Be back late. At first, I blamed stress, her work, deadlines. But now, sitting in that quiet room with the soft breaths of our children filling the space, I realized I couldn't remember the last time she said, "I love you," without it following a routine goodbye. Then I made the mistake of opening social media. I never snoop. Never needed to. But something about the way she delayed seeing us, her own kids, it rattled something in me. I didn't go digging. I just looked. Her profile was normal. Curated. Clean. But I checked the hotel's tagged location. It's something Serafina used to do. She never posted directly, but people around her did. I found a group photo. 6 or 7 people, arms around each other, cocktails in hand. The lighting was low and amber-toned, the kind of filter people used to pretend the night was more magical than it was. And there she was, off to the side, laughing, hair swept up, a navy dress I'd never seen before. Her smile, it stopped me. It was wide, easy, a kind of joy I hadn't seen on her face in months, maybe longer. But what got me wasn't the smile. It was the man beside her. Not too close, but close enough, leaning in just slightly. And his hand, it was hovering near her lower back. Not touching, just aware. I stared at that photo for a long time. Not out of jealousy. I'm not built for drama, remember? I don't jump to conclusions or create problems where there aren't any. But I know my wife. I know that look in her eyes. It's the one she used to give me. And suddenly, her delayed response made more sense. She wasn't away on a trip. She was in a different world entirely. One where the people she was with didn't know the names of our children, or how Serafina once cried watching Elodie's ballet recital, or how Cyrus still asks if he can sleep with the light on when it storms. She was smiling like she didn't have a history. Like her present didn't include us at all. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. Just lay there listening to the hum of the air conditioner and the slow tick of the analog clock on the nightstand. I wanted to believe I was overthinking, that it was a trick of the light, that it was all just nothing. But something had cracked. And when something cracks, it doesn't usually make noise. It just quietly breaks. The next morning, Serafina messaged again. Let's meet for breakfast before my session. No greeting. No mention of the kids. Just a time and a location. I replied, we'll be there. She didn't know I'd already seen her photo. She didn't know I'd spent the night watching the face I thought I knew shift into someone else's. The kids were excited. Elodie braided her own hair. Cyrus insisted on picking out a small flower from the hotel garden to give her. I watched them and felt a strange, slow ache. They were still in the world I wanted to believe in, but I had already started to fall out of it. The cafe she chose was tucked between tall glass buildings and heavy silence. It wasn't the kind of place you take children, no pancakes shaped like animals or crayons on the table. Everything inside was gray and still. The only color came from the little orange cups they served espresso in. Serafina was already there when we arrived. She stood to greet us, her body slightly angled, arms open, but not wide. The kind of gesture people make when they're expecting to be seen, but not touched. She smiled, but it was almost cautious, measured. Elodie ran to her. She always runs. Serafina bent down, hugged her, then gave Cyrus a quick squeeze. It wasn't cold exactly, just not familiar. She didn't ruffle his hair the way she used to. She didn't ask if Elodie brought her sketchbook. She didn't look at me until both kids had sat down. And when she finally did, she held the eye contact for barely 3 seconds. Just enough to register politeness. That was all. Wow, she said. This is really surprising. I nodded. That was the idea. She laughed once, softly. The kind of laugh you give when there's a gap in conversation and you don't know how to fill it. Then she reached for the menu, scanning it like it mattered. I watched her eyes move over the words. She wasn't reading them. The waiter came. She ordered a tea she never drinks at home. The kids chatted, told her about the plane ride, the funny flight attendant, the hotel with the wobbly elevator. She smiled at all the right moments, made the right faces, but her eyes stayed somewhere else. I couldn't tell where, and I started to wonder if even she knew. I didn't bring up the message, or the delay, or the photo. I just sat there and watched my wife slowly become a guest in her own family. Halfway through breakfast, Elodie asked if we could all go to the beach later. Serafina blinked. Oh, honey, I don't think I can. I have a panel this afternoon. It's kind of important. But we flew all this way, Elodie said, confused. You said you'd be with us. Serafina looked at me, briefly. Something flickered behind her expression. Not guilt. Not anger. Something else. Maybe calculation. I didn't expect you, she said quietly. I didn't plan for this. I smiled gently, not because I was okay, but because I didn't want the kids to feel the cold in her tone. I tried to answer for her. Maybe tomorrow? Or even just dinner tonight. She didn't answer. She folded her napkin instead. Very carefully, like it was the only thing she could control. The rest of the meal passed in fragments. A few bites. A few stories. She barely touched her food. When we stood to leave, she kissed Elodie's cheek and gave Cyrus a little wave. Then she hugged me, not out of affection, but because it would have looked strange if she didn't. Her arms didn't wrap all the way around me. There was space between us. We walked out into the California light, and the kids skipped ahead toward the sidewalk. I looked back through the cafe window. She was already seated again, phone in hand, smiling. Only this time, it wasn't at us. We spent the afternoon wandering along the shoreline. It wasn't a beach day, not really. The sun hid behind thin clouds. The water was colder than it looked, and the sand clung to everything like it didn't want to be forgotten. But the kids didn't care. Elodie chased every wave like it had a secret inside. Cyrus collected broken shells and lined them up by size. I watched them from a bench near the rocks, pretending to read a local magazine someone had left behind. I checked my phone more often than I wanted to. No new messages. She didn't ask where we were staying. Not when we left the cafe, not in a follow-up text, not once. I kept telling myself it didn't mean anything, that she was busy, overwhelmed, distracted. But it echoed anyway. We'd been married 12 years. I knew her habits better than I knew my own. She was the kind of person who double-checked seatbelts, resorted grocery bags by temperature, and set calendar reminders to call her grandmother every Thursday. She didn't forget things. So her silence wasn't accidental. It was intentional. By 4 p.m., the clouds thickened. Cyrus looked cold but didn't say anything. Elodie's hands were red from the wind, and when I wrapped her towel around her, she leaned into me without a word. We walked back toward the small rental we'd booked, a two-room place just off a quiet street where the houses looked like they'd been painted by memory. I made soup. The kids watched a movie. I sat in the kitchen with a mug I didn't drink from. At some point, I opened our wedding album. I hadn't packed it, but I had the scans saved to a folder in my cloud. Backup I'd always thought was more for nostalgia than necessity. There we were, younger, smaller, more certain. The way she used to look at me back then, like I was the only voice in the room. Now, I couldn't remember the last time she'd really listened. The kids fell asleep early. I stayed awake. At 9:41 p.m., a message came through. Sorry about today. Tomorrow is tighter than I thought. I'll try to swing by if there's time. Hope the kids are okay. That was it. No apology for being distant. No mention of the beach. No asking how they liked their day. No, I love you. It didn't read like something from a wife. It read like something from a neighbor. One trying to be polite, but not too close. I stared at the screen and wondered if she was alone when she typed it. I didn't answer right away. I didn't want to. Not out of anger, but because something inside me needed the silence more than I needed the reply. I turned off the lamp, walked to the balcony, and sat under the soft hum of distant traffic and wind through unfamiliar trees. And I waited. Waited for a version of her that might never walk through that door again. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear or heartbreak. I think I just didn't know where to put myself. The quiet in the room wasn't peaceful. It was indecisive. Like the air couldn't figure out if it was holding its breath or letting something go. The next morning, I didn't wake the kids. I let them sleep until the sunlight warmed the floorboards. They deserved that. They didn't know what was happening, and I wasn't ready to explain a story I couldn't yet finish. I brewed coffee just for the smell. I didn't even pour a cup. I just stood by the open window, listening to a bird I didn't recognize and the soft shuffle of distant footsteps on pavement. Then I saw her. Serafina. She was walking down the sidewalk, maybe 50 feet from our door. Alone. No bag. No rush. She wore the same coat I'd bought her last Christmas, the one she said she loved. But she didn't look up. Didn't glance toward the house. Didn't slow down. I don't think she knew we were there. But part of me wonders if she did. And I stood there, frozen, watching my wife walk past the window like we were just another part of the background. There's something strange about seeing someone you love in the wild, detached from your shared world. She didn't walk like someone carrying a secret. She walked like someone who didn't owe an explanation anymore. That subtle, thoughtless confidence of someone who'd already made peace with her decision, even if she hadn't spoken it aloud. I didn't call out. Not because I was afraid, but because something in my chest whispered, don't. Later, I told the kids she had an early meeting. Elodie frowned. Cyrus just nodded. I think he already knew something was wrong. Kids feel it in ways we don't give them credit for. The shift in tone, the forced smile, the way she'd hug them with one foot already out the door. We spent that day doing normal things. We found a tiny bookstore where Elodie picked a used fairy tale collection with pages soft from years of fingers. Cyrus bought a puzzle and worked on it at the kitchen table in complete silence. I pretended to read the local paper. The hours passed like folded paper, quiet, weightless, too thin to hold meaning. Around 7 p.m., my phone lit up. I'm sorry I haven't made time. This trip was more demanding than expected. Let's talk when I'm back. Talk when she's back. Not see you. Not can I come by. Not let me hold my children or sit with my husband or look him in the eye. Just talk. Like a business handoff. And something inside me, not anger, not grief, something softer, sadder, just loosened. Like a thread quietly giving way. I sat there, holding the phone, letting that message settle in like fog, and for the first time in all this, I didn't want to reply. Not out of bitterness, but because I realized something no one prepares you for. Sometimes love doesn't leave. It just stops being invited in. The day we flew back was unusually still. No drama, no airport stress, no missed connections or spilled drinks. Just motion. Cyrus sat by the window, watching the wing cut through cloud. Elodie fell asleep holding a stuffed fox she'd picked up at the bookstore. I sat in the middle, in that strange in-between space where thoughts lose shape and just become static. I didn't text Serafina that morning. She didn't text me either. When we'd left the rental, I looked at the bed we hadn't shared. I noticed how little space we'd taken up. No used towels. No shared moments to leave behind. Just small signs of children and a man trying not to unravel in front of them. There had been one more moment, though, one I hadn't told anyone about. The night before we left, I saw her again. From a distance. She was sitting on a bench outside the hotel where the conference had been held, her head tilted back, laughing at something someone said. Same man from the photo. No contact, no impropriety. But the way she looked at him, it was easy. Too easy. I didn't interrupt. I didn't walk closer. I didn't even flinch. Because I understood something in that moment. She wasn't cheating on me with him. She had already left me, and was simply using her body to catch up with the choice her heart had made long ago. I watched her for maybe a minute. The lights from the building behind her made her hair glow faintly at the edges. She looked peaceful, not conflicted, not scared, not guilty, and that's what made it feel real. I stood under a nearby street lamp and watched the life she was beginning without me. Not a scandal, not a betrayal, just a quiet shift, like the last page of a book being turned without fanfare. She didn't see me, or if she did, she chose not to show it. When the plane landed back home, the kids ran ahead in the terminal. I walked slower, my bag heavier than it should have been. Not because of what was inside, but because I carried something invisible with me, the beginning of acceptance. And when I unlocked the front door to our house, I didn't expect to find a letter. I didn't expect a voicemail. I didn't even expect flowers or regret. I expected nothing. And that's exactly what I received. The house was untouched. The plants she used to water were wilted. The hallway smelled the same. The framed photo of our family in the foyer was still crooked, just as I'd left it. But somehow, nothing looked familiar anymore. I stood there for several minutes. Not moving. Not crying. Just taking inventory. Of the rooms. Of the silence. Of myself. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't wonder what she was doing. I wondered why I had spent so long waiting for her to come back. The morning after we returned, I woke up before the alarm. Not out of habit, not for work, just because sleep didn't feel useful anymore. The house was cold. Not freezing, just enough to notice the air had changed. I walked through it slowly. Every room felt paused, like a TV show someone had stopped mid-scene. Her jacket still hung by the front door. Her mug was on the counter, dry and forgotten. Her toothbrush sat by the sink. And somehow, all of it felt untouched, like she'd left these things behind by accident. like she meant to come back for them, but forgot, or didn't want to. I made oatmeal, the kind she never liked. Raisins, no sugar. The kids still slept. They were adapting faster than I was, already folding themselves back into their routines. Cyrus had unpacked his bag the night before without being asked. Elodie placed the stuffed fox on her pillow like it had always belonged there. Their quiet resilience only made me feel more exposed. At 8:43 a.m., her name lit up on my phone. A message. Short. Formal. Let me know when we can talk. I think we need to be honest about things. There it was. Not an ending. Not even a confession. Just the shape of a conversation neither of us wanted to have, and both of us knew was overdue. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I folded towels, watered the plants, deleted the half-written reply I'd started the night before. The one that said, "Are you happy?" The one that said, "Do you even miss us?" The one that said, "Why didn't you look up when you walked past?" None of those questions felt worth asking anymore. I found one of her sweaters in the laundry, the one she used to wear when we sat on the couch together watching old movies on rainy days. I didn't press it to my face. I didn't cry. I just folded it. Slowly. Precisely. Like I was trying to be respectful of something that used to matter. I placed it in a box. Not out of anger. Just because I couldn't stand to see it draped over the back of the chair anymore. That afternoon, I picked up the kids from school. Cyrus asked if she'd called. I said no. He nodded. Didn't push. Elodie hummed a song she made up in the back seat. I stopped at the grocery store on the way home and bought things I hadn't in years. Frozen dinners. The kind I used to eat before marriage. I stared at the shelves for longer than I should have. Not because I couldn't decide, but because it felt like I was making a decision about more than food. Back home, I opened the windows. Let fresh air move through rooms that had felt too still for too long. And in that small breeze, I started to imagine what life would sound like if it wasn't waiting anymore. It was a Thursday. One of those overcast days that doesn't make a scene, just settles into everything without asking permission. I just finished loading the dishwasher when Serafina called. Not a message. A real call. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before answering. Not because I didn't want to, but because I needed to make sure I could hear her without losing my balance. Her voice was calm, measured, familiar in tone, but not in meaning. She asked how the kids were. I told her. She said she'd been thinking a lot. I told her I had too. There was a pause. Then she said it. I don't think I'm the person you married anymore. I closed my eyes. Not from shock, but relief. She had finally said what I'd been carrying alone. I know, I said. And that was it. No blame. No anger. No list of regrets. Just two people telling the truth, maybe for the first time in years. We talked about logistics. About the kids. About what comes next. The call lasted 17 minutes. It ended with a soft goodbye, and a quiet thank you, and I meant it. Because she gave me something I hadn't realized I needed, permission to stop holding on. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat on the back porch with a mug of tea and no phone in my hand. The sky was cloudy, but the wind smelled like spring. Something small and green had begun pushing up through the cracks in the garden, unnoticed, unplanned. I thought about how much time I had spent trying to keep something from breaking, when maybe it had already evolved into something else entirely. Not a failure, just a different shape. The next morning, I got up early and made pancakes, the messy kind, the kind the kids laugh at. I played a record I hadn't touched in years. Cyrus asked if he could take apart the broken lamp in the garage. Elodie painted a birdhouse we found in the attic. I sat between them, not thinking about what was missing, but about what was finally beginning to return. Myself. Not the version that once needed her to feel whole. Not the man who held his breath waiting for someone to turn back. But the quieter, steadier man who finally knew how to exhale. And as the light filled the kitchen that morning, warm and forgiving, I realized something. The house wasn't silent anymore. It was peaceful. And this time, it was mine.